I welcome you all to the 17th All India Conference of China Studies. Now we will proceed to the thematic panel 6 based on China and Asia. I request the chair and the panelists to please take your seats on the dais as I call your name. This session is chaired by Dr. Vignesh Ram. He is an assistant professor, Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Manipal. The panelists for the sessions are Dr. Khushnam PN. Dr. Khushnam is an independent researcher, IR, and regional security analyst. He will be presenting on expansion of Chinese influence in the shifting geopolitics of West Asia, regional and global implications. Shahadat Hossain, who is a research scholar at the Department of International Relations, South Asian University, New Delhi. He will be joining us virtually. The theme of the paper is China Factor in India's Neighbourhood First Policy, focus on Bangladesh and Maldives. Shruti Day, she is a doctoral scholar at the Department of Politics and International Studies, Pondicherry University, Pondicherry. She will be presenting on China Factor in the India-Vietnam relations, assessing through conflict management and conflict resolution theory. And Prosper Malangme, who is an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science, Maharaja Bodha Chandra College, Manipur University, Manipur. The theme of the paper is Reviving Pax Seneca, Geopolitical Implications for India. For more information about the panel, please scan the QR code given on the backside of your tags. I would like to remind all the panelists to confine the presentations to 10 to 12 minutes and keep the remaining time for Q&A. Now, without further delay, I hand over the session to Chair Dr. Vignesh Rao. Thank you.
Thank you. So welcome everyone to this very important session, which we will be looking at on China and Asia. So, as the saying goes, that when things move to their home ground, it becomes much more intense. So, when we are tracing China's rise, we often see that the debates and the discussions about China's rise primarily start from maybe China's influence in its neighborhood, its extended neighborhood, and largely situated finally in the context of the larger geopolitical global rivalries which exist between China and the United States, for instance, and also how other countries play a role in terms of balancing and in terms of situating this particular aspect of China and its role in Asia. So it's a privilege for me to welcome all of you to this session, and if we see over the past few decades, and what I will do is a little different in this particular session, where probably I will just flag off a few points from the papers initially, which are common across most of these papers which have been submitted for this session, so that we in the end have more time for Q&A, so that it becomes a much more interactive session over here, right? So most of the papers here, for instance, highlight that over the past few decades, they have, of course, talk about the importance and the transformation which China's rise has done to this region, especially in Asia, different sub-regions of Asia, whereas one paper deals with West Asia, one deals with looking at India, one deals with India and its neighborhood, basically looking at Bangladesh, and one looks at Southeast Asia, looks at Vietnam. So the common thread which I see from most of these papers is largely that it deals with the question of China's investments, looking at the Belt and Road Initiative, and also looking at its strategic partnerships and relations with countries which are traditionally known to be in the sphere of influence of the United States, which has been a predominant power in Asia for a very long time before we start on the more modern debates about the rise of China, which starts from the early part of 2000s, where we are talking about China's rise, where we talk about also the questions of China's peaceful rise or peaceful development as a concept which starts from there. And then we slowly move on to looking at how the competition between the US and China develop. So this is one common theme I've seen in most of the papers, which situate the question about China and its rise in Asia over here. However, we must also consider, for instance, this could be one thing which can be understood from most of the papers, which we can add, is to look at the broader implications of China's actions, not only in terms of its rise as an economic and military power, which has been looked at in most of the papers, but also its pursuit of something like soft power, for instance, which was discussed briefly yesterday in one of the sessions, and through the aspects of cultural diplomacy, media influence, and also technological investments, which was covered in some aspect in the first session today in the morning. So in parallel, the challenges posed by China's internal policies, including what is raised when we talk about the discussions, basically about the questions on human rights in Xinjiang, in Hong Kong, and have garnered mostly international attention and also prompted debates on several issues about questions of following international norms and values, and also the questions of rules-based international orders and whether China has been following these issues in shaping the larger debates in Asia. So mostly, this session will largely also delve into these other critical issues, and I hope to leave a few questions with the speakers before they present, is to look at the larger question of the geopolitical positioning. Where do we see China's geopolitical positioning in Asia? And is it not just reshaping the region, but also impacting, how is it impacting global politics? The second, as we engage in discussions today, I also encourage all of us to think critically about the opportunities and challenges and the consequences of China's rising influence in Asia. When we talk about consequences, opportunities, and challenges, we need to understand where we are sitting today, a country has become the center of the whole debate in Asia about how do we talk about countering, for example, China's rise. Should we cooperate with China? So these basic questions will always come into the picture when we talk about the position of India. And I also look forward to obviously a very engaging conversation with our audience here, who may want to place these particular pertinent questions to our panelists here, who may want to take on those questions and answer them as well. So as we have been discussing, mostly when we talk about geopolitics, is that the center of gravity is shifting from west to east. So I think our panel should also move from west to east. So we'll start from West Asia, then probably go on to Dr. Prosper, who will talk about India, and then on Shahadat Hossain, who will speak on Bangladesh, and finally to Shruti, who will speak on Vietnam. So the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and putting the session in the right perspective. It's a very, very important region I'm going to deal with. And basically, I'll be talking more about West Asia and how West Asia is getting affected with the rise of China in this turbulent world. That's a very, because it's a very strategic region, geopolitical center of the world, has been always the center where all the great powers have played their own role for their own interest and pursued it to the end. Still, the war is underway in West Asia, and all powers are trying their best to get their share. So in this, how China is playing the important role in this. First, I would like to say, so far as my paper is concerned, I'll probe into the expanding and changing interest of China in the region and its evolving pattern, and the changing vision and national interest of the regional states. And third one, the context of changing global geopolitical shift and geoeconomic shift and the geopolitical syndrome. In that, first I would like to, because my paper is talking about the expanding influence of China in the shifting geopolitics of West Asia, regional and global geopolitics. So in that, first I'll be telling, in my opinion, and it is generally accepted that, so far as from the perspective of the powers, the geopolitical sectors of the globe can be divided into three: Europe, West Asia, and Indo-Pacific. After the World War II, the Europe was the most important sector. And the West Asia was also part of it. Slowly, after the post-Cold War, West Asia took the center stage. And everything, most of the powers were having the rivalry there. And now, in the last 1 decade, we see that the Indo-Pacific is coming to the center stage. So with this, the pivot to Asia of the US, they are trying to create a US order in West Asia with the Arab and Israeli alliance and move to Indo-Pacific to contain China. That is their strategy. And in this context, how China is responding in that region, it's very, very important to see. So this region, West Asia, is basically having 3 geopolitical actors. So if you try to understand it, you'll find Israel, Arabs, and the Iranians. So till 1979, Iranians and Arabs were the 2 pillars of US foreign policy. After the revolution, the Iran came out. And after that, the policy of the US changed in this region. And now they are trying to bring Israel and the Arabs together. And the last their successful outcome has been the Abraham Accord. And now Iran, and now in this context, if you see, China is trying to play the important role for last 1 decade. So trying to bring and trying equally, bring inclusively to all the important 3 actors, Israel, Arabs, and the Iranians. In this, the first in the modern times, in the contemporary times, the Arab policy paper of January 2016 was the first important endeavor on the part of China to re-engage and deeply engage, rather say, or focus deeply into that region. And it was further boosted by the 2016 itself, the President Xi Jinping's visit. And 2022 played a very important role. And when the President Xi Jinping visited the region, and it was just 6 months after the visit of US President Joe Biden in July. So in this, the 3 important things happens. For the first time, the very comprehensive, you can say, summit was held with China and Saudi Arabia. Second level, it was, you can see the perimeters. And then with China and GCC countries, and then China and the Arab Summit. So all these 3, rather you can say, whatever efforts China was making in this area, were consolidating them and entrenching their interest and whatever was happening in the economic sense. So that this can be seen from 2 important policy strategy and policy goals, which is emanating from this 100 years centenary of CPC in 2021. They were trying to develop China as a moderately developed country. And by 2049, when the centenary of the formation of PRC, they want to China as a developed country. So in this perspective, they are pursuing that region. So basically, China had, in the beginning, they were telling that we are having this economic engagement only in this region, which they call as diplomatic partnership. And with this, they had technological engagement as well as investment, partnership. And slowly, this all thing led to the defense cooperation, military cooperation, as well as when they have invested so much economically, financially, and investments are going on, all the areas, the security becomes very important, and they are slowly coming into the arena of security as well in that region. So in the changing West Asia, why it is happening, why the West Asian region is so receptive of Chinese engagement and pursuit in that region. So basically the Arab countries, the Arab Springs played a very important role in that they become very skeptical of the Western responses. And then the Syrian conflict, which played a very important role. All the important actors were involved in that: Iran, Arabs, and Israel, along with USA. So all this played an important role. The very trust, the security trust of the regional countries on the Western countries and the Western model were completely skeptical. And then the Houthi attacks in 2019 in the Aramco installation of Saudi Arabia, and the responses of very lackluster response of USA played a very important role to see towards east by basically the GCC countries and led by Saudi Arabia. And Kamal Khashoggi issue also played a very important role. And after that, you all must be remembering that Crown Prince bin Salman, he visited first China just to show that how the policy perspective of Saudi Arabia and the region is changing. And with this, another important point, when all these were happening, if you see that geopolitically, all the countries, they are trying to be independent and autonomous so far as the security is concerned. But when they were trying to have military hardware purchased from USA, they were having some issues in that the QME, that is the qualitative military edge, which the USA has signed for Israel into the region, that they will transfer all the military hardware and tools to the Arab partners, but will maintain Israel's qualitative military edge. That led to a problem, internal problem, basically with the very close allies like UAE, because it was understood that it was a part of the Abraham Accord that the F-35 will be transferred to UAE as part of the Abraham Accord, though it was not written, but it was in the agreement. So when the approval was not given, so far they have not got it, and the problem lies there, and they're trying to, UAE is now looking towards China to update its military hardware. And this is another important point for the Chinese, in the Indo-Pacific, they feel hard-pressed. The US and the Western expansion, basically with the NATO expansion, NATO plus, the 4 countries, NATO plus 2022, they joined the Madrid session. They are New Zealand, Australia, South Korea, and Japan. With this, the China is feeling the heat of the expansion of NATO in this region and how they will respond to that. So along with this, they found that US policy of Taiwan with the strategic ambiguity and the support, this all played an important role, while all these important countries which are becoming important in the G20 format and all other important format in the emerging multipolar world, the West Asian nations, they are very strongly supporting the one China policy, and that is very, very important geopolitical relief for the Chinese. So in this, they are trying to create, China is not trying to see their engagement in the region in the one perspective and a monolithic perspective. They are aligning with different countries differently. They have different model for UAE, Egypt, Israel, and Iran. For Iran, it is basically the anti-West, anti-US alliance, because along with Iran and Russia, they have formed these 3 are a heavily sanctioned country, Western sanctioned country. So they are trying to, you can say, oppose the dominance by you can say, liberal international order led by USA. And Israel is a very important technologically advanced country. So with them, they have comprehensive innovative partnership, which they have signed in 2017, and they have very important industrial park, joint ventures in Xinjiang, and later on, 2017, they have put Shanghai, China-Israel Technology Hub.
Dr. Khushnam, can I please ask you 2 minutes more, please?
Thank you. I'll summarize. And after that, they were having, in Israel, once again, they had, in Tel Aviv, the Jiangsu Center of Innovation and Startup. So all this played a very important role. To my point is this, all this important, if you see that BRI, which is they started in 2013, and the Global Development Initiative 2021, and Global Security Initiative in 2022, and Global Civilization Initiative in 2023. So if you combine all this, you'll find that all these policies are nothing but the geopolitical format of China. And all these are converging in West Asia, and they are taking on the West and the US in particular, and trying to keep US engaged in West Asia, not to allow them to come in a full scale to the Indo-Pacific, where they are trying to come. That is the strategy, very important strategy. And now, as the Gaza war is underway, I find that slowly China is trying to align more and more with the Arabs and the Iranians. And very recently, last week only, after the normalization of relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabia Army General has visited Tehran military headquarters, and now they are trying to have joint military exercises in Red Sea. So all these things are happening. It's a very important geopolitical development and changes in the region. So American order was trying to bring the Arabs and the Israelis, And now slowly, the China is trying to, in the backdrop of the war, Gaza war, Arabs and the Iranians to the side. So this is going on in the region. And if you see globally, I see that 1972 was a very important geopolitical event happened.
Dr. Khushnam,
Even
your time
happened.
is up. Can you please conclude?
Yeah, sure, sir. And it happened, and out of the three powers, they detached China from Russia, and that finally led to the collapse of USSR. And 2022, China and Russia once again have signed their limitless cooperation and comprehensive partnership. So this again has brought the world to the different stage globally in the global geopolitics. And so I summarize here with this, that the West Asia is now having a geopolitical realignment under China, and another alignment is pursued by USA to maintain that. And globally, Russia and China is coming together so far as the Western global order is concerned. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So can I invite Dr. Prosper, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. At the very outset, I would like to thank the ICS and the chair for giving this opportunity to present my paper. The title of my paper is Reviving Pax Sinica, Geopolitical Implication for India. So, coming to the word Pax Sinica, what is Pax Sinica? So basically this Pax Sinica means a sinocentric order. So what is this sinocentric order? So in this sinocentric order is based on hierarchy model. So on the top most we have a Chinese empire, on below the Chinese empire we have a vassal state. So the international relation between the vassal state and the Chinese empire was based on a tributary system. So this vassal state has to pay tribute to the Chinese empire. So in return, the Chinese empire would permit them to rule over their vassal state. So in that way, Chinese empire maintained stability, peace during that particular time. So during this Pax Sinica or sinocentric order, we also witnessed Admiral Zhang Ha maritime expedition, which showcases its maritime prowess. And at the same time, we also come across China's four great inventions such as paper, printing, compass, and gunpowder, which also showcases Chinese advancements and development during that particular time. And so during this Pax Sinica period, China also started ancient Silk Road, which was a global trade route. So presently in the contemporary politics, now under President Xi Jinping, now China is trying to revive or trying to regain its past glory, that is Pax Sinica, trying to revive or in the process of reviving this Pax Sinica. So in the process, in this Chinese ambitious project, there are certain geopolitical implications for India, and in this paper I have used power transition theory to understand this power dynamics, and then I have tried to understand what is the India's strategic responses to China to counterbalance China's influence. So the research objectives are to analyze the geopolitical implications of China's efforts to revive Pax Sinica, to examine the impacts of China's initiatives, explore India's responses and strategic imperative, assess India's strategies. And thus, some of the research questions are, how is China attempting to revive Pax Sinica under President Xi Jinping leadership? What are the geopolitical implications of China's revival of Pax Sinica for India? How can power transition theory explain the current dynamics between between China and India? What strategies should India adopt to counterbalance China's growing influence and assertiveness in the region? And methodology and approach, I have used qualitative and analytical approach and the significance of the studies. So I have tried to contextualize this Pax Sinica. So how is this Pax Sinica important for India? So the revival of Pax Sinica by China or Xi Jinping has implication for India as in the sense Chinese rise development has influenced India's policy making. And I've tried to apply power transition theory in my studies, and at the same time, how India as a middle power negotiate this complex geopolitical power play dominated by major powers. So the major powers basically US and China, and India is considered as a middle power. So coming to the power transition theory. So what is the basic argument or core concept of power transition theory? So power transition theory is developed by AFK Organsky. So what the core concept or basic idea of power transition theory states that when there's a rising power, when this rising power matches with the dominant power, or when these powers becomes equal, there is always a conflict. So, and according to this power transition theory or Organsky, there are three phases. There is pre-industrial, then industrializing, pre-industrial, industrializing, and fully industrialized. So in this pre-industrial phase, as the power is static, there is no conflict, or conflict is less. And in the case of in the phase of industrializing, as the country gains powers, it leads to increase in conflict. And when the nation is fully industrialized, then nation consolidates their power, and then either they challenge the existing hegemon or settle in a new global hierarchy. So what are the key components of power transition theory? So there are three important components of power transition theories. There are power, hierarchy, and then satisfactions or dissatisfactions. So conflict during power transition. So this, according to power transition theory, as the power matches, it tends to leads to destabilization or conflict. Like you can take the example of World War I and World War II, when German was developing at a very fast pace. It led to destabilization of the international order. So currently, we can take the example of China. Now China is rapidly developing itself, and now it is matching up, or it is competing with the United States. So coming to China, resurgence of Pax Sinica. So going back to a bit to the history, the Opium War took place in 1839, 1842, and 1856 to 1860. This was a two Opium War. So this Opium War marks the onset of century of humiliation, which means that century humiliation means that China lost its sovereignty. It came under the influence of Western power. So it was considered as the beginning of century of humiliation till the establishment of People's Republic of China in 1949 under Chairman Mao Zedong. And then in 1978, Deng Xiaoping came to the power, and he initiated reformation and opening, and which led to an economic boom in China. And then finally in 2001, China joined World Trade Organization. And now in 2013, Xi Jinping, the current president, came to the power, and now we are in Xi Jinping period. So Xi Jinping talks about Chinese dreams or national rejuvenation. So in this Chinese dream or national rejuvenations, his ideas or target is to achieve this prosperous, strong, modern socialist state by 2049. So which means basically we can interpret this as China wants to establish this Pax Sinica or Sinocentric order or modern society, developed society by 2049. So this establishment of national rejuvenation is under Xi Jinping is not a first attempt. So if we go back to the history, the first national rejuvenation was done by Sun Yat-sen, the founding father of Republic of China after the Xinhai Revolution of 1911. So he talks about, Sun Yat-sen talks about national rejuvenation through his three principles. In these three principles, he talks about nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. So this Chinese dreams or national rejuvenation is a legacy of Sun Yat-sen continued by present President Xi Jinping. And again, in this Xi Jinping new era, now China has stood up and it is not following the advice of Deng Xiaoping, who had advised China to lay low, wait for your time and don't lead. But now China is standing up. Xi Jinping is leading and trying to provide an alternative to US-led international liberal order. So how is China trying to achieve all these things? Xi Jinping has started Belt and Road Initiative in 2013, which is, we can compare it to the ancient Silk Road, through military modernization, through China's strategic diplomacy. So in that China ambitious project, it has a geopolitical implication for India. So what are some of the implications for India, like China regional expansion? For example, we can take the example of CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is in Pakistan, which passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which disregard India's sovereignty. So it affects us. And then strategic encirclement, China investment in Gwadar Port of Pakistan, Hambantota in Sri Lanka, and then Chittagong. It's a strategic encirclement, and it has a security threat for India. So because this port has a dual use, in any eventuality it can be converted into a naval base. And then border disputes. Recently we have come across Doklam issues, Galwan Berry clash, and border issues or territorial integrity for China, which China call it as a core interest. Territorial integrity is a core interest for China, which they say that it is non-negotiable. So as China is rising and they say it is a core interest, we might find it difficult to negotiate on these border issues. And then China's maritime Silk Road and South China Sea conflict. China is again heavily present in this sector, which again is a roadblock for India AICCS policy, as India is trying to expand itself in Southeast Asia and Indo-Pacific region. So the presence of China is problematic for India again. And then Malacca dilemmas. So Malacca dilemma.
Dr. Prosper, 1 minute, please. You can conclude if you can.
Okay, I'll try to wind up. So again, Malacca dilemma. So Malacca dilemma is a choke point in terms of for China in energy import. And then India has heavily invested in Chabahar port in Iran, and then China is based in Gwadar port. So it might threaten our India interest, as India is trying to expand into West Asia and Central Asia through Chabahar port. And then coming to, okay, I'll go to India responses and strategic imperatives. So how is India responding to China rise? So India has initiated infrastructure development in border areas such as Vibrant Village program, and then border area development program in the border regions, and military border modernization. India has procured such as Rafale jet from France, economic diversification and reducing dependency on China. Now our government has started Atmanirbhar or self-reliance. Then neighborhood diplomacy and regional connectivity. We have India's neighborhood first policy. Then balancing China with multilateral diplomacy. We can take the example of Quad. And then dealing with structural constraint. Like when we compare India and China economy, our economy is less. But then India has given foreign aid to our neighboring state and invested in our neighboring states such as Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. And then strategic partnership or pragmatism. Like we can take the example of Ukraine-Russia war. India has not taken the side. And India has categorically stated that we are on the side of peace instead of taking a side. So we have a long-term strategic imperative. So in this, India talks about climate change, sustainable development, and India is a founder member of International Solar Alliance. And then India has a Sagarmala policy and Sagar with security and growth.
May I please ask you to conclude?
Okay, fine. Security and growth for all in the region initiative to check the maritime domain, and India is involved in India, Middle East, Europe connectivity. So, in conclusion, what I would like to say is that the China's rise challenged the present US-led international liberal orders. So, in this process, it has created some geopolitical problems for India. So, India is responding strategically through its strategic autonomy, like to answer the question of our chair who has stated before, like whether India is cooperating with China or no. Yes, we are cooperating. Yes, we are not cooperating. It's situation to situation, and balancing relation with global powers. And then we also see a declining regional India. Currently, we see that India's influence has declined in South Asia, and then we need there's a need for internal competence and strategic recalibration. With internal competence in the sense that what is happening in Manipur is not an internal competence on the side of India, and strategic recalibration in the sense that presently in the Bangladesh situation, the Bangladesh mood is towards China. So we need to strategically recalibrate. We need to reaccess our India neighborhood first policy. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, now may I invite Shahadat Hossain to present? Yeah, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Uh, uh, could you confirm me if my screen is sharing?
Yes, your screen is shared. Can you please make it full screen if possible?
Is it now full screen, I think?
No.
My God.
Okay, I think you can just continue like this if you are unable to make it. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome to my presentation. So that's my bad luck. I missed my flight. So my topic is China factor in Indian neighborhood fast policy. Basically focus on Bangladesh and Maldives. So my name is Shahadat Hossain, and I'm from Department of International Relations, South Asian University, New Delhi. So what is the objective of my topic? What is that is if you see my topic, there is a topic, there is a three parts. One is Indian neighborhood fast policy, second is China factor, and third is what kind of challenge India is going to face in its neighborhood, basically in Bangladesh and Maldives. So my basic research question was first is the primary question was uh, how has China's influence presence in Bangladesh and Maldives affected Indian neighborhood fast policy? And in the sub question, I try to find out what are the specific strategic, economic, or security challenges has posted by China in Bangladesh and Maldives for India. And third, I try to find out how is India is counter, or how India could counter in China's influence in these nations. Bangladesh and Maldives through diplomatic, economy, or security initiative. So, so in the background of research, I want to say three points. That is, what is Indian neighborhood fast policy? So why not China is the part of Indian neighborhood fast policy? According to the Ministry of External Affairs of India, the so Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Myanmar, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka is considered Indian neighborhood. And the main objective of the Indian neighborhood fast policy is to enhance physical, digital, people-to-people connectivity across these regions. And China's an emergence of China as a regional influence, particularly China's extensive infrastructure development in South Asian nation like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives has posed a challenge for Indian strategic alignment or strategic initiative in South Asia. Even if you see the Bangladesh and Maldives, there is some particular initiative in Bangladesh, that is military and infrastructure development by China, and in Maldives there is a massive infrastructure investment, FDI and tourism investment from Chinese side. And in research methodology and data collection, I use the primary data like as government documents on the policy paper, also in the secondary data from the newspaper reports, book or the journal articles. I basically, in the methodological approach, I basically combines the primary and secondary data for a comprehensive review, and I focus on the senior Indian competitions in Maldives and Bangladesh, and analyzes the Indian challenge in the India challenge in managing China's regional influence. So, if we see the Chinese contextual background of the Chinese foreign policy, there is a three part of the Chinese foreign policy. That's one is Mao Zedong era from 1949 to 1976. It was very much a ideological governance there practiced, but in Deng Xiaoping area, it's little shifted to pragmatic reform, and there is a one line from the Mao Zedong, that is, it doesn't matter if cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. So that's they little shifted from the their ideological governance. But in the third phase, the Xi Jinping era 2012 to present, is a strong emphasis on the regional influence and the development goal, which is called 2049 goals of China. And there is a three key foreign policy approach from the Chinese. There is a community of common destiny, what is a regional initiative from China. There's a peripheral diplomacy, it is neighborhood circle, first, second, third circle, but particularly which is all over the world. The pronounce is Belt of Road Initiative, BRI. So I reviewed these three approach of China's foreign policy, and also I try to see the changes. I work on the regional approach in this my paper, basically how China see South Asia, how China see Asia, and in the theoretical perspective, I try to find out how this China's massive engagement in Asia, how is reacted by other nations like it India, USA, or Japan. So in South Asia, you could say the China threat, like uh, in the regional stability, it's become a concern for the India strategic response. Some scholar is see it's like it's another US dominations, like another US model to dominations. And I also see the how actually China and India relation has shifted from the Pondicherry policy, and how the border conflict within the China and India is increased. So if we see the how China and India perceive each other, there is a you could say the trade relation is ongoing, but there is some concern in border in the cyberspace also. And third part, if we see how China see Bangladesh and Maldives, that's very important. That is see the if the historical relation between China and Bangladesh was not so good, but in the recent dynamic has shaped, particularly from 2016 after signing the BRI with China and Bangladesh. Now all the political parties of Bangladesh consider China as a well-weathered friend. Even if you see the China Maldives relations, before 2012, there is no Chinese embassy in Malé. But from 2013 to 2018, there's a government who is known as a pro Chinese government. And that 2017, there's a free trade agreement with Maldives, which is the first free trade agreement from the Maldives to any foreign country. And this is Maldives has, and now Chinese loan is 52% of Maldives external debt. Even the strategic objective was also there. Bangladesh is importing 47% of its arms from China, and also there is a submarine base in Bangladesh which is funded by operate by the China in Bay of Bengal. So how India sees Bangladesh and Maldives? So India-Bangladesh relations is very much typical. Now it's a little shifting in the recent development, but it's very traditional relation where they use trade relations, cultural, political relations, there's a historical relations, and the economic and the military cooperation also is there. In India, Maldives relations also is very much traditional because of when both nations engage with India, with SARC and the BIMSTEC. So there is a significant trade with in Bangladesh and Maldives with India. But now the Chinese massive engagement in these nations, particularly from 2000 after the 2013, after the agreement of BRI with these nations. Now this massive engagement is this is economic engagement, infrastructure development, military engagement has posed a significant challenge for India. What kind of challenge actually is facing? Before that, after this literature review or discussions, I got some literature gap which I address in my article. That is, when you see the South Asia, we the and Chinese engagement in South Asia, we overlook the geoeconomic and security issue, how the Chinese geoeconomics and the military engagement has influenced the South Asian uh, geopolitical landscape. And we primarily discussed with the soft power of China, that is the economic power, but China is also soft power, is a hybrid power in South Asian nations. This is soft power and hard power they both practice in Maldives and Bangladesh. And that is the regional perspective. We actually we don't used to see the South Asia as a region. We see from the Indian side, from Pakistan side, from Bangladesh side. So when the regional initiative in South Asia is not working now, now the China got entry with the mass economic and the security engagement in South Asia. So the India's China challenge in neighborhood policy, which I find out that is first. Now the as China's influence in South Asia. Now the South Asian nation, small nation, has options. Not India is only one option for them. China has options who has lots of money. And the strategic issues, strategic position of China, which is a concern for India, particularly the Gwadar port in Pakistan, Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, Paira port in Bangladesh, and there is a Kua port in Myanmar, and also the military ship roaming around Maldives, and the military expansion like of the I say the in Cox's Bazar, China is established. China is operating at a submarine base. So both economic and the both strategic initiative from the China is challenging, is posed a challenge to India. So I got some key findings from this research. That is, first is security challenge for India. The Chinese never Chinese engagement in this Maldives and Bangladesh. That is, China's military presence and partnership in Bangladesh and Maldives pose significant security challenge. And from the realist perspective, we suggest India should extend military alliance to counter this threat. And second is the complex relationship dynamic. Bangladesh seek a balance between Chinese and Indian influence, highlighting how warning against joining the US-led alliance. And the China established military facilities with Myanmar, with Maldives also, which is concerned over its regional intention in South Asia. So, and I suggest India need for a strategic response, that is effective implementation of Indian neighborhood passport is critical to counter Chinese influence, and addressing the complex in Chinese soft and hard power strategy will be essential for India to safeguard its regional interest. In the conclusions, I would like to draw that is Indian neighborhood fast policy already has some challenge. and the face significant challenge due to Chinese increasing influence in the South Asia. And if you see the Chinese growing influence, that is in this is development partnership, strategic positions, military cooperations. So, if for to counter China, India need a more multi-factor approach. India must bolster economic and strategic engagement with Maldives and
Shahadat,
Bangladesh, and
may
also
I
the
ask you
people.
to please conclude quickly? Your time is already up. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and third is sorry, fourth is culture and people-to-people connectivity. As I suggest to Indian neighborhood first policy. Indian authority should emphasis on the cultural exchange, which is crucial to fostering strong ties and collaboration with Maldives and Bangladesh. And the strategic recalibrations, that is adapting a strategy to reinforce partnership with neighborhood, which is essential for India to maintain influence and secure regional interest. That is my actually conclusions of my discussions. If you have any questions or the future questions discussions, you
Okay,
could
thank you.
ask.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Yeah, Shruti.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the introduction. Without wasting much time, I would dive right into the topic of presentation, which is China factor in India-Vietnam relation, assessing through conflict management and conflict resolution theory. When we consider the existing literature on Vietnam's bilateral relation, a broad range of literature looks at their cooperation in the areas of defense, economic, maritime relation, India's strategic and energy interests in the South China Sea, Vietnam's diversification of its foreign relation to reduce dependence on one power, which has been a case in the past. However, China being a factor in India and Vietnam's relation have also been a part of the existing literature. The intricate relationship among India, Vietnam, and China in the Southeast Asian region epitomizes a complex interplay of various elements which requires an understanding of national interests, power asymmetries, strategies which are adopted by these states. In addition, India's territorial boundary dispute and Vietnam's maritime dispute with China also acts like major irritants in this complex relationship. This paper is divided basically into three parts, which examines the China factor, theoretical construct of conflict management and conflict resolution theory, and the ongoing dispute pertaining to the area of territorial boundary as well as maritime area. Since the existing literature have not looked into the intricate relation of these three states from the perspective of conflict management and conflict resolution theory, hence the incorporation of this theoretical perspective will add a new dimension to the existing literature. I'll dive right into the objectives. The aim of the paper is to look at how China is a factor in India and Vietnam's bilateral relation. Secondly, it seeks to incorporate the theoretical construct of conflict management and conflict resolution theory. Thirdly, to understand the ongoing dispute, its irritants, and selective conflict management strategies adopted by these states. Bringing to the third slide, that is the research question, how China is a factor in India and Vietnam's bilateral relation. Second is how conflict management and conflict resolution theory will help us to understand the ongoing dispute among these states. Third, how will conflict management theory will help us to identify the irritants present in both the ongoing disputes. Okay. Coming to the part, which is China factor in India-Vietnam relation. China has been a part in India and Vietnam relations since the time of the Cold War. Due to the paucity of time, I will not be looking into the politics of the Cold War period. Nevertheless, there cannot be any comparison in India and Vietnam's perspective towards China. It varies due to a range of factors such as geographical location, historical interactions, ideological affinities, power asymmetries, economic interdependence, and difference in threat perception. When it comes to India's perception towards China, it can be viewed through two separate lenses, that is, growing influence of China, both at international and regional spheres, concerns about its national security. Whereas Vietnam and China are not just ideological bedfellows, but also are geographically close, share a history of not just dispute, but also outright war, and it is economically entangled with downs as well as upsides of the leverage. However, coming to the challenging factor, there are the challenges actually stems from China being an upper riparian country. In the case of both to India and Vietnam, in the case of Brahmaputra and Mekong River, and both the countries are facing some kind of water security issues. Now, what put China at the center is the ongoing Sino-Indian territorial boundary dispute and as Sino-Vietnamese maritime dispute in the South China Sea. Both the dispute pertains to the area of land and maritime, which involves different methods of conflict management. China's assertion of its perception of land and maritime boundaries through the use of military force in both the areas are seen as a common prototype. Now, the theoretical construct of my paper is mainly based on understanding what is conflict, dispute, conflict management, as well as conflict resolution theory. While I was going through the existing literature, most of the papers, there was I could identify that there was an overlap of the terminological usage when it comes to conflict and dispute. But conflict is rather defined as a set of inconsistency, mutually incompatible goals, idiosyncratic and multifaceted process. The conflict doesn't take place in isolation, but it is an action-reaction process which is initiated by one state against the other. And eventually, conflict can also unfold into war through a phase series of tension, crises, as well as violence. Now, coming to dispute, dispute is generally viewed as short-term disagreements that are easily solvable if the parties are willing to work together. And in dispute specifically, where the terminology is used, the legal aspects are mostly taken into consideration as we see the usage of the word dispute in India's territorial and territorial boundary area as well as Vietnam's maritime area. However, there cannot be watertight compartmentalization between the both. The management and the resolvence of the same depends on the extent of interest, salience, tangible and intangible issue involved in dispute and conflict. Now, this brings me to the vital difference in the conflict management strategies and the nature of territorial conflict and maritime conflict. Territorial conflict is one of the most complex conflict. When a state shares international boundaries with the other, it generates a probable set of gains and risk and complex interdependence, issues of unacceptance of each other territorial boundaries, disregard of historical agreements, perception and misperception, and strategic rivalry and the presence of tangible and intangible issues can act as a source of territorial conflict. Coming to maritime conflict, it takes place due to the pursuit of living resources, offshore non-living resources, that is energy resources, uncertain sovereignty over uninhabited islands or rocks, and varying interpretation of the UNCLOS. Since different states adopt different interpretation of how to draw a boundary line at sea, it leads to enlargement of their maritime jurisdiction, maritime dispute or overlapping claims, and maritime contestation over marine and natural resources. This brings me to the final part of the theoretical construct, that is conflict management and conflict resolution. Both the terms can be used interchangeably because there are vital differences as stated earlier. Conflict management is mostly defined as an attempt to reduce, limit, or eliminate the scope and level and intensity of violence in conflict and building a structure where the need to resort to violence in future conflict is controlled. It is often associated as piecemeal approach. The conflict management strategies are categorized into verbal pleas, appeals, mediation, legal arbitration, and humanitarian aid and peace operation. In contrast, conflict resolution is better understood as the process which aims at putting an end to conflict through elaborately working on mutual integration of interests of both the parties in best way possible. Now, while I was looking at the literature again, I found that the conflict management strategies which are adopted by the states actually goes through various phases, because the nature of conflict is very dynamic, it's very multifaceted. So whenever we look into these strategies, it can't be one-dimensional. Even if it's one-dimensional, there are interests which needs to be emphasized on. Coming to the contextualization of India-Vietnam relation vis-a-vis China through conflict management and conflict resolution theory, I would like to state that whenever we look into dispute, and since dispute is often termed as a short-term disagreement, mainly focusing on the timeline and the resolvence rate of the dispute, in this case, particularly pertaining to India's territorial boundary dispute and Vietnam's maritime dispute, we can see that there is certain element of irresolvability over the period of time, which actually stresses on that it is not a short-term disagreements which the states are having with China. So we can state that even if a dispute is continuing, there can be an underlying element of conflict in this. Now, coming to the case of Vietnam, its relation with China is characterized both by conflict and cooperation. I will not dive in details about the Cold War period, how the states were rivals at one point of time, but with the conclusion of the Paris Agreement in 1991, both the states started to normalize their relation, leading to the signing of the Land Boundary Agreement in 1999 and the Agreement on the Delimitation of the Territorial Sea, Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf in the Gulf of Tonkin in December 2000. It was ratified in December 2004. Now, coming to the area of the existing dispute, which is South China Sea. So a 6-point agreement on basic principles guiding the settlement of sea-related issue was signed on 2011 between Vietnam and China. However, the dispute over South China Sea has been continuing, which actually flared up after Vietnam's partial submission to the Commission on Limitation of Continental Shelf in 2009. And although we know the nature of dispute in South China Sea, it doesn't involve just one claimant, it's just there are multiple claimants to it, giving a very complex character, but it also, it also gives a picture of a competition over fishing and energy resources, which is one of the vital reasons why this conflict is continuing, and also China's attempt to artificially build islands and also militarize the island has been one of the bone of contention in this ongoing dispute. Now, coming to India.
Shruti, if you can just conclude in a minute, please.
Yeah, sure. India and China's relation is characterized by 3-layered C, that is conflict, cooperation, and complex interdependence. The paradoxical nature of India and China's territorial boundary dispute also stems from non-negotiable sovereignty factor, disagreements over historical maps, I mean to say the cartographical disagreements, and also a difference in perception of boundary, which also reflected over the standoffs which took place between India and China before the end of the Cold War. I mean, I'm referring to 1967 and 1986 standoffs. However, before the end of the Cold War, like just nearing the end of the Cold War, JWG, that is First Joint Working Group, was set up between both the countries. And if we see that from the period of the 1990s till the 2000, there has been much positive development in terms of bilateral negotiation between these two countries. For example, BPTA was signed in 1993, CMBA, that is Confidence Building Measure Agreement, was signed in 1996, Special Representative Meeting of 2005, and Working Mechanism for Coordination and Cooperation in India-China Border, Agreement on Border Defense Cooperation, etc. Now, even despite signing of these 4 agreements, there has been Um, China did not uphold those agreements in full spirit. As I stated earlier, the misperception, trust deficit, infrastructure development along both the sides of the actual line of control has been some of the major irritants in India's boundary dispute.
Can I please ask you to conclude?
Yeah.
We'll have a discussion.
India's boundary dispute with China. Furthermore, like I stated, like if we go by the terminological definition of dispute, which points at the resolvability in short period of time, India's boundary dispute with China doesn't show signs of resolvability, given the conceptual emphasis of dispute on time framework. Okay, now coming to the concluding section. In conclusion, based on the objectives of the paper, the relevance of conflict management and conflict resolution theory has given a broader perspective of both the continuing dispute in identifying the major irritants, and also the preferred strategy of conflict management in both the cases has been bilateral negotiation. In the case of Vietnam and China, the effectiveness of conflict resolution was only durable in the case of land boundary agreement and the maritime delimitation in the Gulf of Tonkin. However, the unwillingness and unpredictability of China's behavior in the South China Sea has dampened the process of bilateral and multilateral negotiation in the case of ASEAN. Furthermore, in the case of India and China, the irresolvability of territorial boundary dispute is much deeper and complex. Like if we see the recent agreement which has been signed between India and China on 23rd of October regarding the disengagement in Depsang and Demchok, has been one of the highlights after 4-year-long hiatus since the Galwan Valley clash. According to my observation, states which are engaged in territorial conflict and maritime conflict, where the level of misperception, difference in interpretation, power asymmetries on the basis of material, functional, and behavioral aspects, and also when the preference of varying conflict management strategies are present, it highlights the irresolvability of these disputes. Hence, I rest my case here. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, so I will just quickly flag maybe 1 or 2 points from one point from each of the presentations, which probably we can think about, and then move on to the Q&A, which I'm very much interested in listening to from the audience. On the first presentation on West Asia, where we looked at a broad range of issues in terms of what are the geopolitical drivers. However, if we are contextualizing, probably one thing which we can look at about China's relations is the lack of a framework or a structure which we generally place the context in, right? We often compare it with the United States, which has a very well-defined alliance system and a structure which has been developed after the Second World War. So how does China work through, for example, the trio or the trilateral within West Asia when we talk about the relations with Israel, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, right? So for the US, it is able to deal with through this structure, probably because it has a system in place. But China, while we consider that, how do we see that happening? To Dr. Prosper, probably the question, you spoke about Pax Seneca, right? So have we come over the point of Pax Americana, the system which started after the Second World War? If we have truly arrived at that point where we can now start discussing about the questions on Pax Seneca, has that worked for China yet? What are the signs through which we can decipher the questions on Pax Seneca, right? The world, Pax Seneca world. And do we see a larger, because most of the times when we see the positioning, we see a larger covert positioning which happens and not overt in terms of military deployments or positions like the United States does. So say, for example, most of the infrastructure projects are deemed as more commercial in nature and not military, except it's probably its base in Djibouti, which is also somewhere positioned as a anti-piracy or a peacekeeping force which is there in the Gulf of Aden. So how do we really define this position of a Pax Seneca world? And to Shahadat Hossain, who presented on India's neighborhood first policies, some of the suggestions were quite, I would say, out of the box in terms of looking at India's foreign policy and finding the basis of India's foreign policy, which we define from the ideas of strategic autonomy and independence and no alliances, where I noted this very one point which said that India should strengthen its alliances, so probably to think about the question of which alliances when we talk about it, because that is against the basic idea of our foreign policy outlook. And to probably coming to Shruti's presentation, finally, we commonly tend to understand that if there are common issues between, there is a common country which is of an issue or a concern between two partners, say that there is an understanding that they should automatically cooperate, where probably that does not happen because there are multiple layers within that cooperation understanding, which you did touch upon in your presentation. So in fact, politically, if we see, there is more common from politically between Vietnam and China than between India and Vietnam, right? It's the system, the political system, the ways in which their communist parties interact over a point of time when it comes to conflict. So with the conflict management strategy, which was your basis, which helps Vietnam and China, for example, let's say, for instance, if you're talking about de-escalating any type of a dispute in the South China Sea, we see that it happens through these informal channels of the Communist Party, for example. Whereas when we look at India and Vietnam, if you're talking about the contemporary debates on decoupling and de-risking, if you see which country benefited most from this particular aspect of, the de-risking, it was Vietnam. Not exactly that much India. India got a certain percentage of it from China, but not exactly that. So where do we place this in the context when we say that both have to cooperate when it comes to asking about the questions on China? Okay, so these were just brief. I will share the other comments later. So if I can just open the floor for questions. We have about 10 minutes. So yes, please. It would be good if you can please introduce yourself as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Noranjana Kashyap. I'm a PhD research scholar at the department. My question is to Mr. Khushnam. Since you mentioned Israel as a key regional player, so how does a high-tech powerhouse like Israel navigate the technological competition between the US and China while maintaining its economic and strategic interests with both the powers? Thank you.
I think we will take probably 2 more questions and then go on to the answers. Yeah.
Thank you very much, panel. My question is to Sir on West Asia. So in the past, US has been the major arms supplier to West Asia, and now that there is a pivot to Chinese arms, how would that really impact the previous US arms infrastructure and relations which West Asia currently has and exists to the new Chinese arms that are coming in? Thank you.
Have one more question. Anyone else? Okay. Any observations from? Yes, Professor Mahapatra.
Thank you. Very brief 2 observations. I think the time has come for all of us to realize that this Pax Americana, Pax Seneca, Pax India type of things will not work anymore. The world is too interdependent. There are too many nuclear weapon and missile powers in the world. And just to give you one example, in order to intervene in such a backward country like Afghanistan, the NATO forces and the United States sought the help of about 37 countries, small and big. Similar thing can be said about the US attack on Iraq in 2003, right? So we should not think about these big, big things, Pax Americana, Pax, unless you limit your own thing, where exactly is the boundary of Pax Americana and all that. So things are very fluid. On West Asia, again, remember that the United States has the strongest military presence in West Asia. Not only the headquarters of the 7th Fleet, but thousands of troops are amassed there. And of course, Israel, all of you have seen how it is doing dadagiri around the region for such a long time. Where is the resistance? The axis of resistance is there, but you saw the outcome. And why is Israel able to do it? All because of the American support. On the one side, they will talk about ceasefire, don't do this, allow the food items to reach Gaza, and simultaneously take these weapons. You know, so that is second thing. The underlining point is the United States today is energy independent. They're able to even sell energy abroad. China, which is a competitor for influence, both in diplomatic and other terms, is a net importer of energy. So Europe itself is dependent on West Asia. So the US has a kind of balance where they're energy independent and militarily controlling the region. China, the competitor, and the European Union, which are part of the alliance, transatlantic alliance, are all dependent on imported oil from the region. So this dynamic is very, very important when you make your analysis. So these two are my observations. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, sir, for those wonderful comments. So over to Dr. Khushnam.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. First, I would like to respond to Chair's comment. That is, China is functioning very deeply. Actually, the overall, it doesn't look like. But they have a very, I think, if you see the maritime Silk Route and their pursuit, first it was Djibouti in 2017. Then there came 2018, the Dokam Port. Dokam Port is strategically located from the two important, very strategic choke points, Bab and Maldives in Red Sea, and the Hormuz Strait in the Persian Gulf. So all these two routes are very important for the American presence, for the 5th Fleet in Bahrain, and their Air Force base in Qatar. So all these are very important, it's happening, and slowly you must be remembering last year when the Gaza war started, immediately after that it was in the news, the 6th warship of China is there in the Gulf. Suddenly it appeared, and one of them was guided missile destroyer as well. So all this you can see, it happened when the Americans were sending their warship in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. So these all power projections are going on, and silently they are working with their allies. And as I have told you, that in the beginning they were trying to have beneficial relationship with all the actors, like say Israel, Arabs, led by Saudi Arabia and GCC, and Iran. But now slowly, as the war is going on, and their stand is getting more and more towards the Arabs, and they are trying to bring the Arabs and the Iranians together. If you watch their the kind of coordination they are doing in the United Nations organizations, their statement in the International Court of Justice, where the legal advisor of the Foreign Ministry of China said that, Ma Zinmin, that the justice has been long delayed, but it must not be denied. But at the same time, they asserted that the self-defense lies more with the Palestinians than with the Israelis, because he very clearly asserted that Israel is the occupying force of Palestine. So with this, now I'm coming to the questions. The other questions are that how they are doing, another important point, they are doing the digital Silk Route. They are pursuing AI, and all the countries in the region, basically the Gulf countries, they are in the process of post-oil economic diversification. In all this, the AI plays a very important role, and UAE is particularly trying to have a target of becoming the AI economy by 2035. So in this, recently there was in the news that the very important company of UAE, that is G42, the AI company, was aligning with the Chinese AI company, that is ByteDance. But slowly the Americans came in, intervened into that, and finally the Microsoft has come in and invested 1.5 billion. And with this, the things are getting changing in favor, US is trying to maintain its primacy, but at the same time, slowly it is sliding away. So now in the question, the first question about how the Israel is maintaining the balance between the USA and China so far as the technological partnership is concerned. But it was going on very well. Israel is the very important country for Chinese startups, and they started from 2015 onward. And 2017, they made very unique, comprehensive innovation cooperation treaty during the visit of Prime Minister Netanyahu to China. So that was going on, but at the same time, as the geopolitics of the entire world is in the flux, China is trying to ensure that its interest, larger interest in the region is being maintained. So more and more, they are Arab-centric, Iranian-centric, and becoming less and less vocal so far as their interest with Israel is concerned. And the second question is about US, West Asia, and China. The weapons. I think about the weapons. Yes. So earlier the weapons were coming, but all of you must be remembering that, as I mentioned in my, during my talk, that the QME, Qualitative Military Edge of Israel, it is the US law made in 2008 that they will maintain the qualitative edge of Israel. Because of that, the Arab countries are not happy. They are trying to get more and more weapons to be, because self-reliant, security-wise. As the F-35 was not delivered to Qatar as well as to UAE, now they are turning towards China. So last week only the Zhuhai Air Show was there, and there the large number, 47 countries participated in that, and most of the countries of West Asia was there. And UAE had shown a lot of interest to buy the jet. First, they were talking about the J-10, which is equivalent of the F-16, X-15 and X-16. And now they are trying to cooperate with China to work on J-35, which is almost equivalent of F-35 of USA. So if you see this, they are trying to do that because they find that they have reached to the dead end so far as the US transfer of hardware and tools, so far as the military hardware is concerned, to the region. Given the scenario, they understand it. So that is another important point. And another important point happening, the Saudi Arabia is now working with the COMAC, the Commercial Aircraft Industrial Group of China, and they are trying to build a regional hub in Riyadh. And with that, they are trying to, because they have already shown till it was very operational level was only the C919. Now, this air show last week, they have shown C929 as well, which is a very big, and they are going to, you can say, downplay the very duopoly of Airbus and Boeing. So with this region is going to be very important for them, and they are investing a lot of silently, which is not there because we are more exposed to the Western media.
Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comprehensive reply to those questions. So I think we have completely run out of time. So I thank all the presenters, and I will call this to conclude this session and hand it over back to.
I'm thankful to all the panelists and chair for an engaging session, and I would like to thank the audience for their participation as well. Now I kindly request Professor Venkat Raman to come on the stage and present a token of gratitude to all the panelists and the chair. I request Alka ma'am to come on the stage. I request all the members to come in front for a group photo.